Hello, it's time for another video of Seismic Loam. This time we are playing Yorion version because Wizards decided to print this card. This card named Shadow Prophecy allows us, if we have domain, look at the top 5 cards of our library and find 2 cards and put it into our hand and rest into my graveyard. Um, putting things into graveyard is very important here, as you can put life from the loam in your graveyard, and then effectively you found the 3 cards you can use. You can fill your graveyard with lands, then make your life from the loam more useful by finding Bosiju, Forgotten Cave, or Tawara, some utility lands you need or triumphs you can cycle and then start gaining some card advantage, some more card advantage. And so loss of 2 life just didn't come out as really important because this is an Omnat deck, and Shadow Prophecy helps us find Omnat, which gains us life, and sometimes, of course, can be bad, like against Burn, losing 2 life, but in most matchups it's not that relevant because the card is just so good in this archetype. Okay, so we are playing 4 of these Shadow Prophecies, and it makes us look very deep for cards we need or some pieces we miss to win the game, and especially playing this card in together with new Leyline binding, but also the incarnations makes a card very silly. Also, Ephemerate is very can be very good target and something you're trying to dig with prophecy. Also, assault loam like Omnat against aggressive decks like Burn, and just helps you find the missing piece you need to win the game. Even post board endurance, force of vigor, stubborn denial, whatever you're missing. This card is really good in finding it, and it's not just a card draw, it can be used in some other versions as a Delirium Enabler. It's fantastic Delirium Enabler. It almost instantly gives you Delirium, which could be important in some other builds, and it just fills your graveyard with utility lands you may use with Loam or Wren. It can be used as a combat trick if you have Sluggerk on the field. That's the reason why I played 3 Sluggerk, because Sluggerk is much better here than in previous Loam builds, because you have Ephemerate, and Sluggerk is crazy good with Ephemerate. It just can one-shot your opponent, and with if you have Seismic Assault, Sluggerk, and Ephemerate. So resolving Ephemerate on Sluggerk after attacking and resolving it again on upkeep, it's mostly lethal damage. Other than that, we have a Shadow Prophecy trick, which helps fill your graveyard in response to pump Sluggerk. Also, you can find life from the Loam with Shadow Prophecy, and then draw a card in response with a Cycling Glen, and then mill the Loam, and just grow Sluggerk incredibly large with as a combat trick and something like that. But also think with this deck, Seismic Assault works well in aggressive strategies that and can be used as a final damage dealer with Life on Loam and Assault. And it can happen with this deck because you're playing, you can chain turn 1 Ragavan into turn 2 Kavu, into turn 3 Scion, Hold, Binding, Ephemerate, or Fury, Solitude, Ephemerate, or just and then go turn 4 Sluggerk, or Omnat, or just or Shadow Prophecy, or Assault, Teferi, whatever. It can be it can have a very aggressive start, like like all other aggro decks. This one is just more mid-rangey, but hands can happen in that way that you have very aggressive hand. You can even Fury Ephemerate turn 1 into Cow turn 2 and or Scion, stuff like that. So that's it. So I just finished a very exciting, interesting league. It was very fun to play, and we will go through the matches and see the wins first 4 matches and one tight loss against Creativity. Okay, so time for match number 1. Let's see them all. I had a bad starting hand, but I played first, so I decided to keep. Um, In this version, I played Arid Mesa, which is a fine deck because it finds 2 basics, but it doesn't find Zagotrium. I did the mana base very quickly, so I didn't. I didn't. Uh, didn't take too much time into building it, so it could be done better. My opponent here misplayed. They played Bolt on Sluggerk with Fetch on field, so they had to use another removal, and I was able to bring back 3 fetches from graveyard, which is really important with my hand, with Domnat, with Fury, Cow. Yeah, so my opponent played Ragavan Murktide here and DRC, and they still had 2 mana left, but fortunately they uh, didn't have counterspell here, so I was able to play land, gain some life, and play my Fury, kill 2 of their creatures, which left them with just Murktide on field, and I had Omnat for next turn to gain some life. So I was in a pretty good position, but unfortunately my opponent drew into 2 hits to kill to kill to kill my sorry drew into 2 hits to kill my Omnat, so I wasn't able to gain life. But you could see here just how good the Shadow Prophecy was. I was able to look at the 5 cards, find Leyland Binding, and then exile the Murktide and start attacking my opponent, which was in 0 cards. I needed top deck to win because I wasn't too live, but had a very fast clock, and they had just 2 top decks to try to win, but they weren't able to do it. Also, my opponent uh, didn't play very good, which made this first game much easier than it would theoretically be. But anyway, I was in a decent position. So at game 2, I intentionally went for basics, and I find the plains, I find forest, and it's very easy to play around it's very easy to play around Blood Moon with abundant growths and this kind of build, and it's still a domain deck, which is kind of incredible. So you don't really have any worries about playing. Absolutely no worries about Blood Moon with this build, and you still get to play Leyline Binding, you get to play the Kavu, the Scion, all the good stuff domain has, and just mostly don't have to worry about your mana. I even now added I added changed my mana base. I removed the arid mesas, uh, put three scalding tarns and three flooded strands in with basic island, which is much better. But as I said, I just that did that first mana base very quickly and didn't think it through very well. So but I made it better now, and it's very good. It's very good currently. So I just let my opponent attack me with this shredder. I didn't even care for them that much. I can gain so much life. I don't even want to remove the blood moon. I just rather take the shredder and attack them with a very good hand. Mm, just a whole shadow prophecy again to do it end of turn. Dig some more, fill my hand again with the other cards, but they had peers, but it didn't really matter, it wasn't important. Game was over anyway, I was just in too much. Uh, okay, so I was in too big of advantage. All of this didn't matter, I just played my Scion and give my Omnat first strike, hexproof, trample, and vigilance, which is really disgusting thing to do. Yeah, that's a mini combo here. Definitely Omnat Scion work very well as in previous version. Okay, that was game one. My opponent, as I said, didn't play very well, but they didn't have much chance anyway. Although they were kind of slow hands, slower than in other games I played. Okay, so this time I had a pretty good hand. Shadow Prophecy ran Fury. I'm not Ephemerate. You can't really have a better hand than this. This hand just has it all. My opponent goes for Ren Kill, so I play Shadow Prophecy. I find the land and the life from the Loam. I decided to take a land so I don't necessarily need to play Loam this turn. But I decided to go for it anyway, because my opponent was just holding the counterspell. And there just wasn't much point into playing anything. And there was no hurry, no need really to play. So I just waited for them to play some creatures. And so I'm able to cast my Fury, then use the Ephemerate and kill their creatures and put a strong 3/3 double strike beater on the field. And I had Assault and Omnat left in my hand, plus Loam in the graveyard, and I was in very good position. At this point, my opponent didn't have much chance. They countered my Seismic Assault, but it wasn't even that much relevant at this point. I had Loam with Forgotten Cave at Tavara. It just gives me countless grind. Just helps me dig more and more into another cave, another Besiege or a Tawara or whatever. So I just play typical Omni stuff and grow my Slogurk to 6/6 in one turn. I didn't even I only milled 2 lands, or 1 land, in 6 cards. It could be much larger, so game 1 was again easy win. I think all the wins were against Murktide. I'm not completely sure, but I think it was the case. We'll see it now, we'll go through everything. Okay, so this was a pretty decent hand. Also in this version, sorry, I played a 2 terminate on the side, which I later removed from the side to help with stubborn denials. I think denials could be pretty important in this build. To help, just because there are a lot of 4 or larger powered creatures in the deck, and stubborn denial just works very well with those. And my opponent was stuck on lands here. Just a second. Okay, that was game 2. So it was again another pretty quick win against Murktide. I think all the wins were against Murktide, but we'll just have to check it. Okay, so the first Murktide opponent didn't play well. The second Murktide opponent got screwed game 2. Game 1, he didn't stand much chance. Okay, sorry, game 3 wasn't a Murktide, it was Sky Stoneforge. It was Sky Stoneforge, but it was really a one-sided game for me here. They just played Caldra, then another Stoneforge to find Butterskull, but at this point I had the Fairy on the field, a Cow on the field, Omelette in hand, 2 Scions in hand. So they just decided to bounce my Teferi for some reason. And then they counter my Teferi, and then I just played the Scion and started doing the beatdown with Omelette in hand. And then attack for 9, play land, gain 4 life, and after that hold binding or just play another Scion because they can't do anything anymore. And that was it. So a very quick game 1. Game 2. Game 2 again, pretty decent hand, like having Ren and Kavu makes this. You just get an option to play the Kavu turn 2 and start very aggressively. And then if your opponent kills your Kavu, you can just start. You can just play a Ren, get your lands, play a longer game, play your Omnat, Ephemerate, Shadow Prophecies, and just do the infinite grind. This turn I decided to go for the Loam, just attack with Kavu, play my other Kavu, do some serious pressure to my opponent life total. And they had just Butterskull in hand and Ragavan on the field. Then I had 2/5/5 Kavus. So I was in a pretty decent position. They find the Caldra, but I just had too much going on at this moment. So they countered the Omnat, which was fine by me, and that meant they can't play Caldra this turn, which means I can attack with my cows, and they have to block because they'll die. So I was just able to kill both Butterskull and Dragoman, trade with my cow, um, just in no rush to do anything, just try to resolve something first, but they go for dispute. I should have played Yatawara, but it wasn't really important. I just wanted to resolve another Shadow Prophecy and enter this game. I saw my opponent went for attack with the Caldra, and I just played my Shadow Prophecy, then play my life on the Loam, get my fetches, play Omnat, play fetch, gain some life, play Fury, play ending, kill everything my opponent has, and yeah, not much they can do after all of that. Just draw into Scion to give my Omnat hexproof, and just hold back and win with Omnat next turn. Omnat Scion, obviously, pretty good. I just play both Furies, kill everything they have, Prismatic Ending the token, and just kill them this turn. That was it. Was that game 2? I think it was. Oh yeah, I think it was, yeah. Okay. Okay, one game wasn't Murktide. I think this was again a Murktide. Just a typical hand for full coral Omnat pile. But then you draw into Sign of Draco, which is fine because you want to play Ren turn 2 anyway, and because this is a Murktide deck, you don't want to play your Scion turn. You don't want to play Scion turn 3 into counterspell, so you just pass with the Shadow Prophecy in hand, and I should have probably just waited and not risk the Pierce. But yeah, they could have played. They could have maybe played the creature, so I would resolve my Shadow Prophecy. But it wasn't important because they tapped out. They didn't get the Shadow ability, and I was able to play my Scion safely. And for some reason, my opponent decided to attack with the Ledger Shredder, and I just blocked it with Scion and killed it. Unexplainable. And I played another Shadow Prophecy, and I find Omnat and the third Shadow Prophecy. So my opponent was in a pretty bad situation. They had iteration, they could have some other creatures or Murktide, but I have Omnat plus Ephemerate plus Prophecy, and this game is pretty much over. Again, I don't want to play anything into counterspell. I just hold a Shadow Prophecy for end turn, uh, make them use their mana first, then force them to counter Prophecy, and then play stuff on my turn. They played my brand, which wasn't ideal, but it wasn't a big deal. I found Slugger and Solitude with the third Prophecy. Also put Loam into graveyard. Okay, my opponent did find sorry, I didn't want to shock into 4 life because they had Ragawan, and they went for Unholy Heat on my Silence. I decided to try the Ephemerate and then hold the Solitude in case they could dash Ragawan, but it wasn't needed. And I just top decked Assault for immediate kill, but I was in a decent situation anyway with Yorion, Solitude, Slugwork, Cycle Land in hand, and that was it. Well, I think that was game 1. Let's watch game 2. So all these games so far were 2-0 wins, and the opponent just didn't put any pressure. There wasn't real competition. So I just played my Ragavan for one here. Hold the mess. I don't want to. It's not necessary to shock in here. Just find a land I need to cast safely. Turn 3, the ferry, draw cards, and dig for the forest. And I found it. It was pretty important to find the forest at this point. And I had the ferry on the field, which meant that I can just safely go Fury kill both of their creatures and cast my own nut and hold Solitude and Scion for next turn. They again go for Blood Moon, but it's just not. It's not game winning. So I just still had the fairy on the field, which can bounce Blood Moon, but I'm not sure I even want that. So I just killed their Murktide and start attacking with Donut. Why did it block? I don't know. Why did it stop? I didn't put a stop here. Hmm. That's weird. It just stopped. Hmm. Okay, it continued. My opponent played the Shredder, and I drew into Leyline Binding, and just deck being good against Blood Moon by itself, and then you also have the Binding and the Fairy to bounce it. So it's practically you practically can't lose against Moon if you play everything smart. Okay, so I again had to. I decided to just go for the bounce, kill my Teferi. Maybe it wasn't a smart thing to do, but I didn't want them to. I wanted to draw a card. I didn't want them to just kill my Teferi next turn. Okay, so again it blocked. I had to do this again. My opponent, I don't know why it's blocking. My opponent countered this, and I was able to attack for 4. I decided to give them the Ledger trigger, play both of my spells, play both Slugger and Dragaman, put everything on the field, and just wait for practically any top deck to win this game. I was in a good position, in a favorable position to win the game on 27 life. This Dragon Ray Channeler doesn't create any pressure to me. At this point, I have a bigger creature than they have at this point of the game. Also, drawing into another omelet is not bad. Okay, they attack for another 3, but it's all really not that relevant. I drew into fetch, which meant that I was able to again gain some life and attack with both Shredder and Omelette. So they let Omelette live and block Slugger with 2. So I kill 1, which makes my Slugger survive, and I deal them 4 damage with Omelette. It just continues to block. They had to jump with the bigger shredder, So it was a free kill. They again just attacked with channel, which is really not relevant at this point. And I drew into Scion, which was decent, I guess. And they had to kill Scion here because it would be a free kill of Channeler. Yeah? I would just block Channeler with Scion. And again, I had a very good attack here. If they kill the Omnat, I can just cast the other one. And having 2/4 force attacking means they gotta let the Ragavan through. And again it blocked, but this game is over. So I put they jumped with both creatures and then conceded. We'll just go to the last match. Last match was a defeat against 4-color creativity. Unfortunately, first game was rough, and I was playing second. If I was playing first, I'm pretty confident I would win this. My opponent had Fire Eyes here, so I wasn't able to play my Scion. I couldn't even play Scion this turn because they had possibly 4 mana next turn, so I was forced to hold the binding. I decided it's best to go for a Ren kill here, and then play my Slugger can hold the binding besiege you, but it's a pretty unfavorable position at this point because my opponent can go second token and do creativity for 2. So it's pretty bad for me when I start a second and my opponent disrupts me for the first 2 turns, and they succeeded to resolve the Scion. I drew into Seismic Assault, and I was able to kill the Archon and hold another land in hand for another Transmogrify, which they did play, and I was able to kill the token, and I basically just needed to draw life from the Loam here, maybe Shadow Prophecy, something like that, or another Slugger, anything really which helps me with lands like Ran. I was able to uh, cast Ragon here, to cast their Fable with my Ragon trigger. They killed my token, and at this point I was suspecting them of having the Archon in hand because they made a treasure token and they had the exact mana to hard cast it, so I didn't want to cast anything from my hand, just waiting for a top deck to try to kill this Archon, and I didn't want to lose both of my cards. So I did find Omnat next turn, and I did find Binding, but unfortunately it was too late. My opponent had a lethal next this turn with Ran, but it was kind of close because Leyline Binding and possibly another good top deck with Yorion could really help me stabilize, play Yorion immediately, same turn, then blink the Omnat, blink the Growth, blink the Leyland Binding, exile the Wren, and just do a lot of stuff for one turn. But yeah, it was a close win for my opponent for 1 damage. And okay, so game 2 playing first helps a lot. Unfortunately, again, my Ragavan didn't connect, and I didn't have a fetch for Ren, so I just had to plus it like this, trying to find the land, but I didn't. My opponent was in similar position. They too found a Ren on turn 3, which then I exiled. But then they leylined my leyline. I guess this will be a thing. This will be a thing now. Okay, so this one was also a hard game. It wasn't easy. It was very tricky. I had run on 7, but it wasn't really relevant. I just had to hold Otawara uh, at this point of the game in case they go for creativity. And I tried to play Prophecy in response, but they spell pierced it. Still, I just wasn't able to play anything. I was forced to hold Otawara here, and the end of turn I bounced there the fairy, just to force them to play the fairy before casting the creativity, and they played the fairy and blasted, and they were able to. Okay, so just let me. It's a very complicated situation. I knew my opponent definitely has a creativity in hand, and I counted that I can win the same turn. So intentionally left the hand in my hand. Didn't leave enough mana for Otawara. I forced my opponent to go for creativity in response to assault, and I just sacked my Ren. I already used the ability from this Ren, and then I just bounced their Archon, I killed the token, and did the final 4 damage to face with assault, and that was it. I succeeded to find. Succeeded to find. I think it was the only way for victory. It was a very complicated situation. It may seem easier when you see it fast forwarded like this, but it wasn't easy to find this winning line at this turn. Okay, so but it exists. It definitely existed, and I succeeded to do it, and I was able to play game 3 and try to earn the trophy. And I drew into a very good hand, so very aggressive hand with Ragavan, Territorial Cow turn 2, Scion turn 3, Hold Solitude, but my opponent also drew into perfect hand. They just had Fire turn 1, Fire turn 1 for Ragavan, then Teferi turn 2, turn 3 to bounce Cow, and then they were threatening with creativity on turn 4, which unfortunately did happen. And I was forced. I just couldn't not play cow that turn. Maybe I could, but it felt somehow really bad. And I was able to just cast. I was able to stabilize, uh, put some hands in hand, then play the Scion, put Yorion to hand, stabilize, kind of. Just my opponent didn't have the other creativity, but unfortunately they had 2 damage to face and attack with this Goblin Shaman. And at this point, I top decked a ley line, and I decided to risk the bolt because they only had one card in hand. I decided to kill the shaman, risk bolt myself because I didn't have enough basics, and now I have a fourth basic in hand, and I would probably fetch that one before, so I'll be able to fetch the mountain now and survive on 5 life, then probably possibly win next turn because my draws were pretty good. I would have another ley line binding on top, plus Forgotten Cave. What happened? It won't let me show the draw, but it was. I had very good draws on top, and I think the game would definitely be mine. So just it's unfortunate I didn't have blue. I didn't have island in deck at this list because my opponent had some weak draws, didn't draw into anything significant, and I just had to shock myself to 3 life and made it possible for them to win with Bolt. And that's it. Okay, so thoughts on the list. Uh, it's really hard to not like the list. Um, for me, I just enjoy this kind of gameplay. Tech has all the cards I enjoy playing, and this Shadow Prophecy card is definitely very good. Sometimes you play it for 4, sometimes for 5, but it's incredibly good all the times you play it, and uh, this deck is incredibly good against Blood Moon. You have Boseiju, you have Leyland Binding, you have Basics, you have Abundant Growths. It's practically unlosable to Blood Moon if you play it smart, but you still get to play the Territorial Cavu, the Scion, the Leyline Binding, all the Shadow Prophecy, all the best domain cards, and except for Tribal Flames, but it's not needed in this version, and that's why you have Assault Loam, Seismic Assault, which can be very helpful with finishing the games, as you could see in a few games in this league. You just have some early aggressive creatures which can help to get your opponents to low on life, like 6, 8, or 10 life. And then in those cases, Seismic Assault is a very good card and can very easily end the game with just 1 life from the Loam or Slugwork or Wren or whatever Shadow Prophecy now. And that's it. So the league you watched had a bit different sideboard. I intentionally changed it for this video because I think this sideboard is better than having terminates, which are really not needed because now we have Leyland Bindings, we have Solitude, we have Shadow Prophecy to find those cards, we have Fury, and I think also Teferi and Seismic Assault. I don't feel I need more of the removals, yeah. Especially with Ren removing some of the lower toughness creatures and having Ephemerate with the elementals. I think it's enough. And I think the 4 stubborn denials could be very important because we play Scion, we play Kavu, also Omnat, also Slogurk. These are all 4 power creatures, and stubborn denial can be very good in those cases. Like if I had the denials in this creativity matchup, I'm sure I would definitely win probably both of these games just because of this card. And other than that, we have some basic stuff like Artifact Enchantment Hate, some Graveyard Hate, some Mystical Disputes, Third of Fairy, Yorion, and that's it. Okay, so hope you like the deck. First 2 games, I had weaker opponents, And first Murktide opponent had good hands but didn't play very well, and the second one lost fairly game one, but game two was mana screwed, so he conceded early. All other games were pretty fair wins. Opponent had like probably uh, best draws they could with their deck, but didn't stand a chance. And the creativity matchup was kind of rough before these changes I did, because I didn't have stubborn denials when I played that league, and the sideboard wasn't very good against the deck, but Leyline Pining definitely help against the creativity matchup, and I expect for that deck to just kind of be worse in a meta game where Leyline Landing is going to be played a lot, and it just stops creativity very well on turn 4 and gives you some to some decks that are similar to this. It gives them a good game pre-board against that matchup. Okay, so that's it. Hope you liked the list and deck, gameplay, everything, and that's it until the next time.